What's the most you ever lost in a coin toss?
I need to know what I stand to win.
You stand to win everything, call it.
Well, hello now. I'm Michael, and I like to eat crayons. Welcome to the Design Boot Camp podcast. Well, hello there. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing really well. I really hope so. Because I'm a little worried about you. Just a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit. Because I'm afraid that at this moment you may be saying to yourself, Self? What did I get myself into? My Lord. This boot camp thing is really tough. Well, I don't disagree with you, but the feeling is totally normal. It is totally okay. This course has been created to definitely challenge you. There is no doubt about that. This is not a vacation. If it were, we would have called it something like, I don't know, Design Vacation Camp or something like that. But this is what I consider learning on an epic scale. Let's look at it that way. Learning anything new takes time and a lot of energy. So what you have to do is just keep your chin up, because you'll be fine. I know that it's a lot to wrap your head around, all this new information, and it's hard to manage it all. I totally get that, because we've been throwing a ton of stuff at you. I know this course would be challenging to probably most design pros out there. There are people I know in the biz right now that would find this course hard to manage. I mean, these lessons, they're not easy. They're not designed to be easy. They're designed to really make you think. But the good news is that the more you practice, the easier this all really gets. Trust me. Because you're soaking in everything like this big sponge. And by the time you complete the course, you will be ready for the big leagues of design. Think of it that way. So just hang in there a little longer, okay? You'll be fine. All right. So this has been my little introduction pep talk to you, just to get you kind of started and to make you feel okay. Okay? All right? Good. So today, I want to chat about working hard and doing the work. Putting some elbow grease into your routine, chopping wood, and all that kind of good stuff. That's what I want to talk about. So, being a creative motion designer, as we all know, is really hard work. You gotta put the hours in, you gotta do the hard work. It's simple. I'll just throw that out there as a friendly reminder that that is what it's all about. That's probably what I would say half of it's about. Okay? Here's a great quote from this amazing book. Maybe you've read it. The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. It's a really inspirational, great book to read. So if you have a chance, please read it. The most important thing about art is to work. Nothing else matters except sitting down every day and trying. So that's a quote from the book The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. I think that's a really important quote because sometimes I really feel so overwhelmed that I can't get started on a project or an idea. I just don't know where to begin. I mean, I've felt that so many times in my career where I sit down, stare at the blank page, and totally, my muses don't show up and I just have a really hard time. And it's totally okay to feel that way and to be in that position because it's very normal. It's kind of like you are being stuck in a big block of concrete or something and you can't move. You may feel like, I don't know, if I can't make something perfect, why should I be doing it at all? I mean, I totally get that because I feel that way most of the time. You probably have already discovered, I guess through some of these lessons in this course, that there is no simple solution to solving a design problem. There's just way too many possibilities to sort of pinpoint, that one perfect solution. And in my opinion, if you are searching out a perfect solution for every project, then you're kind of going about it the wrong way. Because it's about experimentation. That's kind of what is so great about being a designer is that you get to experiment along the way as you're trying to solve that problem, which is a wonderful thing to do. So I've found in my career that the act of working every day and just kind of doing something, whether it's good or bad, is as important or more important than doing like a finished design product. So just sitting down and doing something. I don't know, the simple act of just opening up Photoshop and making a color choice, or maybe, I don't know, laying out a piece of text on a frame, making a shape a different color, tweaking that color, doing stuff like that, really routine, sort of simple tasks. That may be enough just to get your juices flowing. So think of it this way. Your project is like this big, old, heavy boulder over there on the hill, right? And you need to get that big thing moving to start your process. But sometimes to get that really heavy boulder to start moving takes a lot of your force and energy. You really, really got to get sort of motivated to get that thing moving because it's really hard work. So you have to A, get motivated, and B, you have to have the stamina to get up next to that rock and start pushing. But the cool thing is once you get that boulder moving, inertia kicks in. And inertia is that thing that once something heavy starts to move, the movement of that heavy object, the inertia of that thing turning, starts to turn quicker and quicker, and it becomes easier and easier. So think of the boulder as your project. So once you get your project kind of nudged and you start to move it, it becomes a little easier as time sort of goes along. And as the project progresses, some things get easier. So a good example of what I'm talking about is that crazy design 3D guy named Beeple. But I like his name, Beeple. I can just sit around and say Beeple all day. But I think his real name is Mike Winkelmann, which may be stranger than Beeple, but I like his first name. So I'll give you a link to his website, so if you're unfamiliar with his work, you can check it out. Anyway, this guy Beeple, he is, I think he's kind of extreme. He really takes the everyday work ethic thing to this new level. I mean, the stuff that this guy does on his website, I just get tired thinking about the amount of work this guy can pump out. I mean, it's like crazy production. But what I find the most interesting about this guy's process is where he started. Now, this is the thing you should focus on, I think. I think this is kind of the key to sort of his success and maybe his popularity in our little niche industry of design and motion. I think he's kind of turned into like a cult hero because of his like really crazy work habits. So anyway, take a look at the everydays section on his website and go back to the beginning of his work. Go back to the very, very first year that he started doing his everydays and look at those images. His very first doodles are pretty weird and they're kind of weak. They kind of lack what I consider like good art direction. They kind of suck, actually. They're just kind of like these brain farts or something. But I think it's interesting to look at those because that's where he started when he started his Everydays project. And what's most noticeable is that the images kind of lack quality. He just kind of does the work. And he says that. He actually says, well, I suck, but that's okay because I just feel it's important just to actually do it. Because he's actually sitting down every day and doing the work. That's what he finds most important. And that is really what is important. He pushes past the fear of failure. He's not afraid to reveal what really comes into his head. He has like no filter, which is kind of wonderful and beautiful that this filter that is in most of us is kind of gone from him. And so he's just kind of recording every day what comes into his head. And that's what's so amazing about what he's doing and how he's working so hard at trying to discover in his own self his passion and the substance of what he's made of. That's what's amazing. So Beeple's first designs are pretty bad, but he doesn't care. That's what's so cool about it. So now go check out his most recent works. I think you're going to find that the difference in quality and creative substance is shocking. I think it's absolutely shocking where he started and where he is today. So by working every day on something creative, Beeple has taken himself on this, I guess, a kind of a journey of evolution and experimentation that has somehow wrapped itself up into this big body of work. It's kind of culminated itself into what he is today. I mean, it is stunning. So basically, by working, his ass off, Beeple has pushed through the fear of all these what ifs and has somehow made a career out of the idea of just working really, really hard. It's unbelievable. So if you think about it, it's like a stunning, amazing experiment in creativity. So he has shown me and you that it is really possible to work your ass off and show tons and tons of growth in all kinds of creative directions. It can be 3D, design, animation, concept development. Honestly, you can do anything. The development that you can sort of take on, the development that happens within you is endless. And I think he's shown that. He's shown that just by working your ass off, you grow by just doing. And I think that's really what my takeaway from Beeple and his website is that you just look at the body of work, look at where he began and look at where he is right now. It's inspiring, but it also makes my head hurt. That's the real problem, which I don't know is good or not, but just seeing the amount of work that this guy has pumped out is amazing. So Beeple is a inspiration in that way, just because he works so damn hard and he's discovered so much. And I have another great example of a get to work story that was told to me when I was around, I would say I was 19 years old, I think. A good painter friend of mine was telling me about a friend of his who had this incredible sort of painting studio / loft. Apparently it was a loft in, some great part of town that was close to probably all these really cool restaurants and bars and coffee shops. I mean, you probably know the kind of place I'm talking about. It's, the studio was just in the perfect part of town. It was just a great place to show up and sort of hang, probably. So anyway, so this person probably had spent, years perfecting their studio, making it absolutely perfect, painting the walls the correct shade of white, probably making sure that there were big windows, blowing in all this natural light that painters need. There was probably kind of a funky couch, maybe a chair somewhere in the space. There was probably this cool kitchen that they had probably made where they can serve all their fancy wines and cheese and all that kind of stuff for all their little art gatherings. And this artist had a easel, this huge expensive easel sitting in the middle of the studio. And my friend said it was really pristine, like it had hardly been used. So I guess this artist had all the right stuff. Perfect space, all the best paints, best easel, and probably had the best looking, most artsy friends. True. Okay. Cool. So they had everything. But here's the big problem with this story. My friend said that this person never worked, produced nothing worth a damn. He or she was an amateur, as he described it. They overglorified the mystery of being an artist. They did what they thought an artist was supposed to do. But I guess what they forgot, which is a big forgot, was to be an artist. I mean, they forgot to do the art. They forgot to do the work. This person, I guess, procrastinated their entire career. They just put things off. They just made things look perfect, but they never got to the point of actually doing what they should be doing because they were so concerned about other little things. And it wasn't because they were concerned about those things. It was that those things were there to keep them occupied so they wouldn't think about what they should be doing, which is much harder, which is actually doing the work. So procrastination takes on so many forms. So be aware of procrastination in your own life. You know, you could be doing things like, okay, I need to clean my desk today. Instead of doing the work, instead of doing my project, I'm just going to go ahead and clean my desk. Or I'm going to get online and kind of poke around, and maybe I'll create a perfect music playlist. So the list of what you can be doing can go on and on. I mean, you could be doing so much other stuff other than working that it's easy to do. So don't fall into that sort of trap. Procrastination is this nasty little thing that can just consume so much of your day and take away pretty much your entire career. So don't let that happen. And then the other part of this story, which I wanted to bring up, my good painter friend probably had the most disgusting studio in probably the worst part of the city. I mean, his studio was so bad, he had no natural light, just a few cheap sort of lights set up near a dark wall somewhere in the studio. He had no fancy easel to paint on. I remember he had these 2 pieces of wood nailed to a wall, and then he would place his canvas on those 2 nails, and he would strap it to the pieces of wood. It was really low rent. It was very low budget. And my buddy painted like a madman every day. He was like Beeple. I mean, he just painted and painted every day, just cranking out some serious good work. So my buddy, who had really the worst studio in the city, he had no natural light, he didn't have a kitchen, he didn't have the nice chair and the couch, he didn't have the beautiful easel, he probably had crappy paints too. But the difference is that he worked and he created beautiful stuff because he's an artist. I mean, he's a doer. He's the kind of creative person you want to be around. He inspired me when I was younger. But his story about his friend who had the perfect studio, who had everything was just so right, but everything was just so wrong because that person never worked. That person never did the work that you're supposed to do as an artist. But my friend, he had the crappy stuff. But guess what? He painted. He painted every day. He produced a massive amount of work. And so I was just totally inspired by him. So you may be saying, okay, you're rambling and you're just talking about all these great stories. But what are these 2 stories? What is the Beeple story and my friend who had the friend that never painted but had the perfect studio? What does that mean to people like me and you? Well, like I said before, being creative and coming up with good design ideas is really hard work. I guess I'd say 80% is shutting up, sitting down, and working. Pretty simple. Shut up, sit down, work. Okay. 20% is what I've heard people call catching lightning in a bottle. It's kind of having, I guess, that aha moment when everything kind of clicks together and an idea kind of forms. But from my experience, it's really difficult to make that happen. I mean, you have to really understand that coming up with great stuff all the time is almost impossible. So you have to be realistic. So that's why 80% is just shutting up, sitting down, and working. Because you never expect, that catching lightning in a bottle moment to happen because it's so rare. So that's why you're realistic. That's why you just work. Because working hard can get you through so many rough patches. And one of these rough patches for designers is a common creative block called the blank page problem, also known as analysis paralysis. Okay? Now this brain freeze happens when you have infinite options in front of you. You have so many options. You don't know how to deal with them all. So listen closely. So you become so worried about making all the right choices that your brain has to completely shut down. It stops, and you end up making no choices at all because you got way too many options, so you just shut down. It's not a good plan, so don't do that. So one great strategy to kind of overcome the blank page problem is to create, some rules and boundaries for yourself. Now you may be saying, well, why do you do that? Because being creative is about breaking all the rules. Well, I mean, it is and it's not. In my humble opinion, it's actually the kind of the opposite. I try to eliminate infinite possibilities so, I can just get started on a project. So I just try to narrow my focus and I try to eliminate all the other options that are unnecessary. So you try to do that as well. Just try to make the first mark. Just don't be afraid. The worst thing you can do is just not try at all. So please don't do that. Just force yourself to do something, to start. Just make that mark. There's no harm in doing that. The wrong move is actually not doing anything. The right move is doing something that may be bad or it may be good. So you make that first mark and you keep going. Always set goals for individual projects. Having deadlines is really actually great. Why? Well, for me, it ensures that, I get the work done. So you may feel the same way. Having a deadline is going to be good because it's going to give you that pressure. So deadlines will also put the pressure on you, and that will sort of kickstart your creativity, which is a good thing. Now, another way to overcome this blank page problem is to set small deadlines within a bigger project. So, for example, let's say you have a big project you're working on, and you don't really know how to start. It's a big project, and it's scary. So what you may want to do is you may want to break it into like 4 sections. So, for example, the first section could be the section where you're going to be doing some mind mapping, or you're going to be coming up with some big picture ideas. You're just going to be writing down your thoughts. So you're not really committing a lot of time or resources to the first section, but it's making that first mark. It's really important that you make that mark and you're not scared to do it. So that's why the first section should be, as easygoing on you as possible. You should, release as much stress from the process at that point as much as you can. Just release the stress. So once you're through doing your mind mapping, coming up with some big picture ideas, and you're just doing some sketching, you check that section off because you've finished something, you've completed something, and it should make you feel good. So you check it off and you go do something. Maybe you go do something that you really like. For example, I like to eat ice cream. So, okay, I finished that first section. I'm going to go get me a big bowl of ice cream and I'm going to really enjoy it. And then when I'm done, I clear my head and then I sit back down and I start on section 2. And section 2 may be a little more comprehensive. It may be a little more difficult. But, you're at that point, maybe you're gathering references. You're online, you're searching, you're maybe on your Pinterest account. You're just gathering and collecting stuff, inspiration. Again, it's not a lot of heavy lifting, but it takes some time. So you get through with that section, you check it off, and you go do something else you'd like to do. So in my case, I'm gonna go get me some more ice cream because I just love ice cream and I'm gonna eat a lot of it. So I go do that. Checked off section number 2. That's done. Now you get into the harder part of the project. You've really got to start thinking about, okay, I need to get all this reference and my ideas together. I need to start really connecting the dots, and I'm gonna have to spend a lot of time on section 3. But when you're through with section 3, it's going to be a really good thing because now you've got this big project and you've finished 3 sections out of the 4. So again, you go do something that's rewarding, something that you enjoy. So again, I'm going to go eat some more ice cream because I've already gone through 3 gallons already, but that's okay. That's what I do. So you get through the 3 sections, you feel good about the progress you've made. You've actually made that first mark. You've come up with some good ideas, and now section 4 is the hardest because now you're going to sit down and you're going to have to come up with some really, really good style frames that really solve the problem for the project. And this is, that's the hardest part. But by that point, you've gotten through 3 sections and you've gotten all your ideas sort of together and you're creating just beautiful style frames at this point. You're really just doing your craft. So it should become a little easier. So that's one way to sort of overcome this blank page problem, is to set up a system where you take these big projects and you break them into sections, and each time you get a section done, you kind of reward yourself. And through the process of going through these sections, you're going to be answering a lot of questions that, when you first started the project, were probably in the back of your mind scaring the hell out of you. But because you've gone through this process, you've actually kind of worked through a bunch of these problems. So possibly when you start these bigger projects, you may want to ask and answer a couple of questions in your mind. And a couple of these questions are things like, what does the project make me feel like? Am I feeling a mood? Is this project or this thing I'm about to take on, does it have an attitude? What's the answer to that? What typeface speaks to me about this project? Is it a sans serif? A serif? Is it thick or thin? What is the color for this job? Is it a 2-color job or a rainbow of crazy colors? I don't know. Do I feel young? Do I feel old? Do I feel hip? Do I feel cool or contemporary when I think about this project? Should I use photos or should it be illustrations? Do I recall something I've seen in the past? Is it a good design, something unique, shocking, or something mundane? Keep answering questions in your mind as they come up. Don't be afraid to do that. Does the project remind me of an animation technique that I've seen? Is the project a circle? Is it a square? Is it a unique shape? Or does it relate to something opposite of itself? Start asking all these really simple questions first. And once you answer a few of these questions, then the process of creating ideas becomes a lot easier. You become not so afraid of that evil, blank page that's staring you in the face because you're making the first mark on the page. You're winning by just making that first mark. Because most of what we do as creative people is we just put in the time. We sit down in front of the computer and we just put in the time. We're experimenting, we're screwing up, we are revising all the time, we're doing research. It just repeats, and it repeats. Work inspires more inspiration. If you succeed, just keep on working. If you fail, what do? You just keep on working. If you're bored, what do? You got to keep working. We're always just clocking into our minds, and we're just kind of thrashing through the creative madness that's in our head. That's it. We're creative people. That's the passion of having creative thought, right? That's just it. Sitting down and doing the work every day and sort of facing that fear of the blank page, of that dilemma. That's the most important part of the process of just coming up with something, is facing the fear and sitting down and doing the work. Many times when my day begins, I have no idea what I'm going to create 8 hours later. It just comes to me as I kind of let my mind wander over the details of a project. I just sit down and just start doing my craft. I'm no prodigy. I'm certainly not a genius. I just try to start really simple. I try to break projects down into sections. I just try to make it manageable for myself. I got to be realistic about all this, and you should too. Use those design rules and boundaries to help you make, easier decisions when, you're starting out. Narrow your thinking and just start simple, just so you can kind of get something started. That's the hard part. Just get it started. You can always, modify and kind of complicate your designs later. Just start simple and then build from there. So over the years, I've learned to quiet my mind before I sit down to work. I kind of let my thoughts pass by me, kind of like a cloud passing through the sky. I just kind of let it go. I let the thoughts just kind of keep passing. I know it sounds a little weird what I'm saying, so sorry, but I do feel the need to kind of slow down before I can speed up and go 100 miles an hour. So I always like to take a deep breath and then sit at the computer and then start slow, think clearly, and then once I get my speed built up, then I can go 100 miles an hour. I need that sort of moment of rest before the big burst of sort of creative output. I think that's kind of really important. To me, it's important, and it may be to you too. I'm also a morning person. I really love doing my best work from like 8 a.m. to noon. And then I kind of get into a little bit of a low point after lunch, and I kind of sit around and, do this and do that until about 3 o'clock. And then from 3 until like 6 or 7, those are like my sweet hours. For some reason, that's when I'm really moving at 100 miles an hour and I'm just doing my best work. I'm really clear at that point for some reason. You may be on the same schedule, or you may like to work really late at night. Whatever works for you, just make the work happen. Set a time and keep that schedule. Make it work for your busy life, okay? So with all this talk about, doing the work and getting inspired, sticking to schedules, etc., to me, the most important thing about being a motion designer is just to be happy with the work that you are producing and know that, improvement comes with time, right? It will happen. You just have to give it time. It's a long and frustrating journey, kind of between knowing how to do something and then being able to do it really, really well, like the best people in the business. I mean, there's a huge gap there. So don't let that gap frustrate you. Don't let technology or the lack of knowledge of a certain program hold you back. Just work the problem. If you need to go digital, go analog, pick up a pencil and sketch. Whatever you need to do to get started, then that's what you need to do. Don't worry how you do it, just do it. That's what the professionals do. They just start doing stuff because they have to get a job done so they can move on to the next one. I mean, most times I don't have time to think from one job to the next. So if I make a mistake on one job, well, I learn from it and I just move on to the next thing because that's what you do as a freelancer. That's what you do if you're working in a studio. You're just going from one thing to the next and you're just learning as you're going. That's what everybody does. So, so I guess to wrap this thing up with a nice little bow, I would say something to the effect of, creating anything is often really messy. And there's all these mistakes throughout the process. So if you believe that the best designers and the best, animators out there always understand where their work is heading and that they have all these sort of answers, then you're wrong. Because being creative to me, is like going to war. You have to be dedicated and really resourceful. I always tell myself, never give up. Being a designer is about looking, it's about listening, it's about recording what you see and what you feel. It's really about doing your best and not giving up. I'm your biggest fan. Remember that, okay? You're doing good. Keep it up.